Have you ever wondered why your vehicle loses coolant and how repair techs find that coolant leak? Well, on today's episode, we're going to talk about that and how we fix it. I'm Kevin from the Pit Stop Tire Pros. If you like information about how to fix your car and keep it looking good, go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any of our new videos. So on today's episode, we're talking about coolant leaks and how we find them and what conclusions can come of it. We had a vehicle that came in that was a 2003 Ford Expedition. Now that vehicle had a apparent coolant loss because we had to add almost 1.5 gallons to that system. Your coolant system is a vital part of your vehicle's operating systems. Your coolant is what provides the fluid that lowers the temperature of your combustion engine. It's also the same fluid that you use to heat up the interior cabin of your vehicle when it's cold outside. So that fluid is in a closed loop system. That closed loop system should never leak out. If it does, you either have an external leak or you have an internal leak. With those leaks, you want to make sure that they're repaired because one, if you lose too much fluid, your vehicle will overheat, which could cause engine damage. Now, when it comes to leaks on a coolant system, you either have an internal leak or you have an external leak. Now, with those two types of leaks, there are two types of diagnostic equipment that we use in order to diagnose that situation. The first one, which is typically most common, is a pressure test. Now, with that pressure test, what we do is we either pressure your radiator or we pressure your coolant overflow so that we can find where that coolant is leaking. And it's typically a gasket somewhere. It could be either the plastic fittings, it could be the hoses to your radiator, it could be the water pump or the water pump gasket. In most cases, those external leaks are the main culprit to coolant loss. But in some cases, your coolant loss could be internal, which is much more severe and typically more expensive. So on this 2003 Ford Expedition, this vehicle was suffering from a major coolant loss. So we did two types of tests on this system to conclude what we found. So the first test we did, we went ahead and we pressurized the coolant system using the pressure test kit on the coolant reservoir. Now, after we pressured it up, we did notice after inspection on the engine block that there was some leaking going on the intake plenum of the vehicle. Now, under pressure, it was a little odd because we weren't getting excessive fluid coming out from that leaking area. So we concluded to hit the next step, which was making sure that the combustion gases inside of the block of the engine were maintaining inside of there and not leaking through one of the ports on the head gasket. In that case, or in that situation, we end up with a vehicle that needs a head gasket repair, which on these vehicles or in certain vehicles is a very, very expensive repair. We're going to hand this off to Dustin, where we found out using our combustion leak test how to diagnose a head gasket leak on this 2003 Ford Expedition.
Customer brought vehicle in, curious about the coolant leak, keeps losing coolant and he keeps having to add to it. So doing a quick pressure check, we're not having any coolant obviously fly out of the motor. So we're under the impression, we've got a suspicion that it might actually be burning the coolant through the combustion chamber. So what I'm going to do, it's called a block leak tester. Fluid I put into the test tool is going to be blue. I'm going to start the engine. Normally you want your engine to be at operating temperature for this. Now obviously if you've got the cap off, I would test this and make sure this isn't geysering coolant out at a hot temperature, because that can happen. Not an issue on this one. So once it's running, we'll put our aspirator bulb on the tool. Put our tool over the coolant reservoir and start sucking air in this coolant reservoir into the tool, mixing the air with the fluid. Now a healthy engine with no combustion leak, this fluid stays blue. This fluid's already turning yellow and green, so we've clearly got a combustion leak going on this engine. Anytime you get yellow, your cylinder head gaskets are suspect. There is combustion gas being pushed into this coolant. Bad head gasket, good head gasket. Want to stay blue. This engine needs major work.
So after Dustin went ahead and did the combustion leak on the vehicle, we found out that obviously this vehicle has combustion gas in the coolant system with this test kit. Now these test kits are readily available at most parts store. They're usually not too expensive, and it is definitely an easy way that you can test this system. And in most cases, you do need to make sure that there is a gap between your tester tube and the coolant level. That way you're not sucking coolant into the tester vial itself. But if this video gave you some helpful information, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any of our new videos. Thanks guys for joining me, and we'll see you in the next one.